Everybody, welcome to Busy Living Sober. Busy Living Sober. Busy Living Sober. It's episode 273. And I told everybody who was listening last week on Thanksgiving, or that was 2 weeks ago, because I took off last week because kids were here. But I told them that I was very excited about my guest. And I truly am so excited to have you here. And we're going to, hi, Becky. Say hi to
Hi,
Becky,
Elizabeth.
everybody.
Hi, everyone.
And Becky is a very dear friend of mine. I've known her for my entire sobriety.
I remember when you came in, it was my birthday.
It was your birthday. Can you believe that? On August 14th, 2006. And here we are 15 years later. And one of the reasons I wanted to ask you to come on Busy Living Sober, for one, you're like one of my biggest cheerleaders. So I wanted you on for that. For two, you're a mom and you have little kids. And we're about to go into the holiday season. Like we just kicked it off. Luckily, I got to spend Thanksgiving with Becky in my home.
Yes.
With her family, my family. It was really, really fun.
Such a blessing, the way it all turned out. Yep.
It's God too, right?
Absolutely.
Because you had
100%.
no idea. You thought you were going someplace else.
Yeah. And then my daughter went to school on Monday and they go around and say, what did you do for Thanksgiving? She's like, I went to Bizzy's. So that was cute. Yes.
Well, it's so funny because I think that if we didn't have our sobriety, would we have the relationships we have with our spouses and with our children like we do today?
I, for one, definitely would not. Yeah, definitely not.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because so you got sober at a really young age.
I did. I got sober 2 weeks before I turned 21. So yeah, so I've been sober for 21 years.
21 years.
Yes. 72799.
72799 is
21, right? Or 22? 21.
21.
Yeah.
22.
Yeah.
No, 21. 21.
Yeah, because you know what? I remember when you sent me a chip and it was for 22.
Yes.
And so then you sent me a pink sparkly one, which is the best. And that was 21. Yes.
So what was it like? Because I don't want to focus too much on it, but just so people can relate while they're listening, it's like, what was it like when at 20 getting sober? And what brought you to that?
So what brought me to that was, growing up. I mean, I always, more of everything. So I grew up and it started actually, I was very overweight as a child, starting in kindergarten, and it just got progressively worse. And, so it started I just felt different. I felt separate. I isolated myself because in order to be at the weight that I was, I had to secretly eat. So I isolated myself. I was a liar. I lied because, people would ask me like, where's this food? And I would just make stuff up, my family and stuff. So, that was from like kindergarten till, ninth grade. Going into ninth grade, I went to an all-girls school and I was, very heavy. And just in elementary school, I fit in because I was the class clown. I would make everybody laugh all the time. But I was hiding. So I think it all started with, I didn't love myself. I wasn't taught to love myself. This is how I felt. I felt that there was like an image that I had to live up to. And no matter what I did, I couldn't do it. It wasn't who I just couldn't do it. So that brought up all of these feelings of, I'm less than, I'm not enough. I didn't know this at the time, but looking back, I've always felt that way. I always felt that I had to fit this mold. And I hear that quite often in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's truly how it was. I felt like I had to fit it. And, with all of my might, I tried and I couldn't. So going into high school, I picked up one drink and I was off to the races. I just remember my first, in ninth grade, I got drunk and got kicked out of a mixer. But like, I just couldn't stop. I could never stop. And that was parallel with my eating, which actually escalated quite quickly. So I went from being, a straight A student to, my parents getting called into school because I was doing so poorly. Because on the inside, I was very sad, and I couldn't tell anybody that. And I was very scared, and I couldn't tell anybody that. And I always felt not enough, and I couldn't tell anybody that. So I was always trying to keep up, and knowing that I couldn't keep up, I would isolate and hurt myself. So going into, the drinking, if you put something in front of me and said, Becky, this is going to make you feel good, I wouldn't even ask you what it was. I would just be like, okay, let's do it. And it just never, once I started, I could not stop. And that created that like phenomenon of craving as well. Like I was always looking for more. So I went to college, and, looking back as well, my decision to go to college was just, yeah, sounds great. Let's go here. Like I didn't know anything about the school, nothing. I just went. I was very impulsive, which is another, I think, characteristic of my disease. Like I never think things through. It's just like, is this good? I didn't want to work hard. I was just like, always took the easy way out so I can get to the drink, the drugs, and the eating, and feel better. So I went to college, and I remember my mom and my brother and my sister dropped me off because my dad was away. And I remember them dropping me off, and I was sitting in the stairwell, and I just cried by myself. I remember that vividly. I was just crying, and I didn't have anybody to say, can I have a hug? Or I'm so scared, or I'm so sad, or something's wrong, something's missing, and I don't know how to get help. I don't know. And, I never had that growing up, no fault to my parents. They did the best that they could. But whenever I was feeling so sad, I didn't have anybody to say, Becky, it's okay. It's okay. I love you. They loved me, and they love me, but I never was myself. I was always just trying to be who I think they wanted me to be. So that made me feel so alone. But I remember them dropping me off and just bawling my eyes out. And I never asked for help. I just went right upstairs, started smoking, started drinking. And that night, I remember this, I went out and made a fool of myself, completely was passed out, blacked out, drunk, don't know what the heck I did, but woke up the next day and realized that I, decided to go to a really small school. I didn't know how small it was until the next day when I was like, oh my God, I saw all these people. They were telling me what I did. And it was the same people that I would see all the time. It was not a huge campus with a lot of people. So I made a name for myself quite quickly. And so how I got to rehab was, again, the eating progressed, the eating and the drinking, both hand in hand. I would go out, get drunk, get high, do anything, always blacked out, always. Never knew what I did, but I would always wake up with like food all over me and not knowing what I did. I would wake up on the bathroom floor because I'm bulimic, not knowing how I got there. So this was progressing. So my freshman year going into my sophomore year of college, I went to my second treatment center for bulimia. It was so bad. I remember I had a nanny job going into my sophomore year. Yes, this was right. I had a nanny job, and I stole all the food from the family. I would just sit there, had to watch these two boys, and I would just steal all the food from their home and lie to their mom because she assumed it was her boys. And I was like, well, I don't know. I think so. It was all this lying, always hiding, always hiding. So there was another intervention. I had several interventions growing up. That's just another thing to note because things were just bad. And I would always talk them out of it. I'm good. Just give me another chance, thinking I could self-will things. I'm good. And then I would be good for like 2 days. And I would be like, see, I'm good. And then pick up where I left off and continue to progress. That's another thing too. I was on academic probation my freshman year. And again, I was like a straight A student, academic probation, almost kicked out, never went to class, never. But going into my sophomore year, my mom called me one day when I was at work and said, I found this place in Colorado, an addiction facility. So I was like, I was like, okay, I'll go for a week and I'll be good. So I flew out to Colorado, and I remember we had, individual therapy, group therapy, all of that stuff. And I remember it was a Catholic nun was my therapist. Yes, I do. And I went into the therapy session, and I forget what we were talking about, but I remember her response. And her response was, "Do you think you have a problem with drinking?" And because I went there to talk about my bulimia. And she's like, "Do you think you have a problem with drinking?" I knew I did. But I was like, no, 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 I'm good. I'm good. I'm just here. The bulimia is really bad. It's really bad. So she was one person, one of many, who brought it to my attention that I denied at the time. But now in hindsight, she was one that planted the seed of a possible solution, that there's help out there. Again, what did I do when I went home? Oh my God, I'm good. I've got this. Thank you, Mom, so much for sending me to Colorado. This is great. I'm good. So I went back to school, and it just progressed and progressed so much to the following summer, where I had an internship on Capitol Hill, and I would show up to work, and everybody was dressed in like suits. All these interns, there was like maybe 10 interns, and they were dressed like, like suits and dresses and all that stuff. And I just remember there was a line of us in, like, with computers, and we'd all sit in a line. And I just remember looking at them and being like, how do they do that? How do they get dressed and come here at 8 o'clock in the morning? I honestly didn't know how. I didn't know how. That was so baffling to me. So what I did with that was I made myself less than in my head. Like, I'm an idiot. Oh my God, I can't do this. How can they do that? Who do I ask for help? Where do I go? I don't know. I have no idea. So I got up and walked out. I went downstairs, walked under the building. It was at the Reagan building. I walked under to the Metro, and I left, and I didn't tell anybody. Just thinking that, throw it under the carpet, everything's fine. I just can't do it. And I went back home, and it was a family member who helped me to open the door to that internship. He found out that I left. He was like, "Becky, this is embarrassing. I mean, I'll get you in there one more time. You've got to stay." And of course, I was like, on the outside, "Yeah, sure, I will stay." Just wanted to make him happy. Whereas on the inside, I was dying. So what did I do the next day? I woke up and I tried to emulate what I saw, so I tried to, like, put on an outfit that all the other girls were wearing. Hungover, of course, on very little sleep, of course, because I was always partying the night before. Um, and I went there, and I showed up again, and I apologized to the guy that was in charge of the interns. I was there for maybe 30 minutes, and I looked down again, and I was like, I really can't do this. And I walked out again. So I convinced my parents that I should get a waitressing job instead. And, everybody was embarrassed. I knew that they were embarrassed in my family. But I tried to make everything better. Here, I'll do this. Everything's going to be good. Everything's going to be good. And it wasn't, and it got worse. And I got myself into a lot of trouble that summer. And so how I got to rehab was I was living in a house with about 10 other girls who were also huge partiers, but they knew how to stop and wake up the next day and go to, like, their teaching internships and all that stuff, which, again, so baffling to me. I also brought people home that were, like, very dangerous that nobody knew. And they're like, "Becky, why are you bringing these crazy people home?" Where I worked at the restaurant. So, like, I had no consideration for anybody around me. And eventually there was another intervention, a huge one, at my uncle's house right outside of DC, where I was going to school, where my parents came down. And I thought they were just going to take me home for the rest of the summer. And again, everything would be good. But my roommate that dropped me off and drove me to my uncle's home where my parents were said, "I'm going to come in, Becky." And I was like, "No, no, no, you're good. You don't have to come in." And she went in, and her dad struggled with alcoholism. And she blew the whistle on me to my parents, my aunt, and my uncle. And she's like, "Becky has a problem, and it's really, really tough, and she needs help." And of course, my first response was, "Well, you drink too. I live with you. You do all of that." But there was also a sense of relief, like, oh my God, I just think I could exhale. Like, I needed help. I just knew I needed, it was so self-destructive. And, so that led me to Florida, to Naples, Florida. The next day I went down to rehab, and I was in rehab for 3 months, inpatient and outpatient, and ended up living there for 2.5 years after rehab. So sorry, that was like the scenic route, but that was how I got there. And of course, getting sober so young, you have these thoughts of, oh my God, I was too young. I was too young to get sober. And I've had those thoughts, at certain moments throughout my sobriety journey. But now, as a mom and as a wife, and with you helping me, I, you know, I don't know where I would be if I didn't get sober so young, because I battled multiple addictions. So it was not easy, nor did I put both down at the same time. I've been self-destructing for, with the eating and stuff, which I finally put down. Thank you, God, which is a huge miracle. Um, I wouldn't be here. So when you asked that question about, in the beginning, about having a relationship with your spouse and your children, I wouldn't be a mom. I wouldn't be here. I would never have that opportunity to grow alongside my children and learn with them, trying to do things differently as I teach them to do things. So I would definitely not be here.
And how have you done holidays? And because food, you've set down the food, you aren't making yourself sick anymore, thank you, God.
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't had a drink in 22 years, almost 22 years. And when you think back, you're like, you're in this culture today that, and we've talked about this before, and that's why I think it's so important to have you on, especially this time of year. It's the moms with the sippy cups and with the wine, and little kids that are saying, Mom, can I have a sip of your drink? And no, you can't, because it's what's in there. You haven't had to have that.
No, I have not. My kids know that Mommy drinks coffee and seltzer water, and they hand it to me.
But when you're social, how do you do? Because you are social. Your husband's very social. You are very social.
Yes. So, so I reconnected with you, like a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Probably 2 years ago. So I live in a neighborhood with a lot of young families, and there's a lot of the moms connect over like wine o'clock. So, and of course they bring their kids there because all the kids socialize together, but the moms are all there drinking wine. And but before I connected with you, I was in a lot of isolation after I had my third baby, a lot of isolation. I lived in my head. I lived according to the story that my head told me. And the story that my head told me was, I don't fit with these moms, so my kids aren't going to fit. And I adhered to that story as if it were truth. And so that got really bad. So before I called you, and my kids, when my kids would go run across the street and all the moms were there, and all of the moms, majority of them, they talk about wine, they drink their wine, the foundation of their conversations is usually, oh my God, I need my wine, or I guess if I got at the liquor store, and that's normal to them, and that's okay. But I would isolate myself. I'd be sitting right next to them and just be in another world. I would be sitting next to them and telling myself constantly, Becky, you don't fit. Oh my God, you're such a loser. You don't drink. That being said, I knew that if I started, they would be dragging me out. Like nobody would want to be around me. So I knew that to be fact, but I lived by not fitting in. I don't fit is the narrative I told myself. So how I would handle that was I would come home from those social gatherings with my neighbors and the wine o'clock culture, and feel so terrible about myself, feel so less than about myself, overtired because I had, 3 kids under the age of 3. So what I did was I didn't know where to put my emotions because, like I said, after my third baby, I think I, really struggled, really isolated myself because it was a huge adjustment. So that would be taken out on my kids, and they didn't do anything wrong. And taking out on them, by that, I mean, like I would raise my voice because I was not reacting to them. I was reacting to the story that I was telling myself, which was, I don't fit. But now, since I've connected with you and we've been doing the steps and we talk every day and I do my meetings, miracles happen. I'm shifting the story in my head, and living by the truth, which is I do fit. I'm here for a reason. My kids are here for a reason. And just because I don't drink doesn't mean that my kids aren't going to be friends with these moms who do drink, children, because that was the narrative I told myself. So it's debunking that story, and living by living dependent on God. So for example, since you and I started to work together pretty consistently, very consistently, I noticed that when I am in those social situations now, which obviously happen quite frequently, I don't tell myself that story. I'm noticing that God keeps planting opportunities for me to see that that was never true. They don't think less of me. And I have actually been able to share with certain, some moms in the neighborhood that I am sober. And their response is always like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I know so-and-so who is, I know another person who is. And in sharing that, if the opportunity presents itself to share it, that's when I do. I feel free. I feel a part of. And also too, it's in that freedom, I also, again, feeling that freedom and feeling that authenticity, that gift of being able to be who I am, who God created me to be, which is still quite new to me because I've lived so much of my life trying to be what I thought you wanted me to be. Like if you told me that your favorite color was hot pink and it wasn't mine, I would be like, oh my God, I love hot pink, or I'd be like, I'm always like, oh, I agree, even if I don't agree. But now I feel a part of it. I'm noticing all of the signs that God puts in front of me to teach me to depend more on Him and to be a part of and to be friendly and to, even though, they might not be my best friends, I can participate in the conversation. And again, that trickles down to my children because they are happy and free when I'm happy and free. And they're able to be joyous with the other kids instead of me thinking they're not going to fit because these moms are all friends and then their kids are going to be friends. So it's a whole trickle down effect of just, grace and miracles.
And tell me this, did anybody during those times that you would go to those parties and you didn't tell them why you weren't drinking? You didn't say, oh, I have a drinking problem. Would any of them even care?
No. Yeah, I thought they cared because of course I'm an alcoholic. So everything's about me. They're all thinking about me. They're all talking about me. No, they're not. They're talking about my kids. They're talking about my husband. They're talking about I don't know, anything I could make up. No, nobody cared. And they all still say that, like, I live in a very social neighborhood. So there is a lot of drinking. And yeah, they all just say, oh, Becky doesn't drink. I mean, and another miracle, I did go to one of my neighbors, her son graduated from high school. And I walked right up, she invited my husband and me to the party, which was very nice. And she's a wonderful person. And I walked up to the driveway, she's like, Becky, you gotta check out this new, is it La Croix or LaCroix? I don't know. The seltzer water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I hear people say La Croix and I'm just like, I just want to be, get it spot on there. But she walked right up. And, obviously there was a lot of drinking, walked right up and she showed me this new flavor that she got me. So I feel that there is, and she doesn't know that I'm sober, but she's very respectful. So nobody cares.
But but our heads think that everybody cares. Like we have this, so many people are like, I don't want anybody to know that I'm not drinking. Or how am I do drink too much. And obviously you don't know what it's like to drink too much in these places because you've already put it down a long time ago. But so many people that have drinking problems today are like, how am I going to go to these parties? How am I going to be part of this neighborhood when I don't drink? And what would your advice be to them?
So what you just described, that's how I did feel. I have felt that way. My advice would be, to connect with somebody who is living in a solution and who has been there and done that and who has walked through a similar path of raising young kids, being in these social settings, and can tell you, can teach you, to depend on God, to point out that it's very self-centered, because as alcoholics, we're self-centered to the core. Plant those seeds, because when you planted those seeds with me, I'm like, oh my God, Elizabeth's right. I'm making it about myself again. So when I do that, I'm able to recognize it, and pause and take a breath and turn to the person next to me who's drinking their wine and ask questions about them and engage them, because everybody's battling something. And so oftentimes some of these people open up to me and tell me about their struggles in life. And I leave that social interaction feeling filled up, because I was able to just listen. Sometimes people just want somebody to listen. So my advice would be to work with somebody who is able to share the light and share, all the things that you've shared with me. And always, because when you make that shift, like I said, the biggest thing for me is I feel like every single day now, because obviously I interact with my neighbors all the time at the bus stop, my kids playing outside. I used to have such high anxiety even playing outside, because I lived with that narrative. I don't fit, my kids don't fit. I don't fit, my kids don't fit. So my heart would pound. And my hands would get clammy. But so my point is I can apply what you taught me to the social interactions with the wine, and also to interacting with these adults and their kids, even without the wine, because in both settings, I felt quite anxious. I felt less than and apart from. So my advice would be, or my suggestion that has worked for me, is to, on a daily basis, work with someone who is living in the solution and who has been there. And also too, the other biggest thing, which I think I mentioned, is when you feel that anxiety in those settings and you're, you want to pick up a drink to feel included and to not feel so isolated, talk to the person next to you, ask them about their kids, ask them about their holiday plans, ask them how work is, ask them how their family is. That's been the biggest help for me, because it takes me out of me. You think it's just always one alcoholic helping another alcoholic. And I think it's more than that. I think it's just helping other humans. And oftentimes that just is listening, and not trying to be like, oh, I've done that. Yeah.
It's such great.
You teach me that.
Well, it's such great advice. And I think that it's like, do you always bring your drink with you too? Or do you always find that somebody has stuff that you like to drink?
Everybody has La Croix. Everybody does seem to have seltzer water. But if they don't, they have bottles of water. But I'm seeing that nobody cares if I don't drink. Nobody cares. And as it says in the big book, which has taken me time to learn, and also I fall back because I'm human, but in falling back and knowing the solution, I'm able to quickly grab it again. So I can be in a social setting with the drinking and feel that feeling of apart from, less than, but it's very short lived, because I will, I don't just pray in the morning and at night. I always, throughout the day, I find myself breathing a lot. And, and especially in the mornings when it's like rush with my kids, I apply the same thing to these social situations, which is, oh God, what do I say to myself? And I'm drawing a blank right now. God was within her, she will not fail. God was within her, she will not fail. And I repeat that to myself, and I find that it calms me. So in those moments, in those social settings where I want to drink to feel included, or I'm feeling the anxiety because my head, which is false evidence appearing, it's not real, which is my disease. When I'm listening to that narrative, I take a breath. I say, God is within her, God is within her. And then I turn to the person next to me and ask them, oh my God, how does Sammy like school? I already switched schools. How's that going for him? I don't, that's the biggest help.
Get you out of here.
Playing. Yes. Yeah. It's a very scary place to live, because it's, you always hear these alcoholics who go out and alcoholics who never get it and die. And that's the reality of this disease. And for some time, I always thought to myself, like, how does that happen? Why do they, they go out and you just never see them again? And I know how. And I think I called you not too long ago and said this, like, if I wasn't working with you, I would be overtaken by the depression, the mental part of the disease. And I know that's how, and there were times that I thought about, I just want this to be done. It's so overpowering sometimes, the disease, when you're not living in the light.
Solution.
If you're not connected to someone else who's walking the same road,
And how is it with Phil? That's her husband's name. I have to throw his name out there. He's adorable, by the way.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
He isn't one of us. he drinks like a normal person.
He does. Yes, he is not one of us. You might make me cry, but yeah, I just feel that God gave him to me on our first date. So this is going to sound crazy, but you know how people always say, you're going to know when you meet him. And I would be like, yeah, right, whatever. But then it happens. So we met on Match.com, which I know that you're familiar with as well. But we talked for like probably 2 weeks before we met. And on our first date, I felt so comfortable with him already from all of the talking that we did. I just said to him, we closed the restaurant down. So we were there for quite a while. And I just said, God's first. And he didn't understand that at the time, but he listened. And, I told him I was sober. I told him all of that because I knew he wasn't going to go anywhere. I knew it. It was just something that I knew, whereas there were other times I hid it from other people, like from random dates or whatnot. But Phil understands now that God's first, because that infiltrates into our relationship, which in turn infiltrates into raising our kids. But I was thinking about, Phil, when you asked me about those social situations in the neighborhood where people are drinking, and I was thinking about how I always feel so much better when he's there, because I know that he he doesn't have the addict thinking, but he just sets me at ease, and he reminds me that I am a part of, just by looking over him, I'm a part of. I'm not less than. I'm his wife. I'm a mom. So he's a huge support, and I just thank God every day that he knows this is a priority. And when I wasn't connected, and I think I shared this with you recently, after I had my third baby, he was the one that was like, can you please get a sponsor? Can you please go back? Please. And I was like paralyzed at the time, just paralyzed with fear, paralyzed with my head, because what was happening was I would tell Phil all these stories that my head was telling me, thinking that they were real. And he would be like, Becky, no one's saying that. No one is saying that, Becky. And I'll be like, yes, they are, Phil. They're talking about me. This person's talking about me, And so after some time of hearing that over and over again, I think he was just like, please, you need to ask somebody to help you. And he would start to mention names of people in the program that I was connected to, in the past. Because you know how AA is. Some people stay for a long time. Other people stay for short chapters. So he would mention some names, but he knows that this is a priority. And like, even when we left your home on Thanksgiving and we were driving back, he's like, I'm just so happy that you're connected again. This is good for us. This is good for us, Becky.
And when you're at these parties and he's having a couple of drinks, which does it ever make you get mad at him? Because he can?
That's a great question. So not because he can. Well, actually, yeah. So there were some times when I would be like that in the past, but that has shifted. And the times that I was mad at him, it wasn't about him. It was about me, mad at myself, not loving myself, again, making myself less than in the moment. And that has shifted as I work more and again, learn to love myself, which is, I think the overarching umbrella for recovery, because why do we self-destruct and hurt ourselves? Because, sorry to say, but it's like the head is like, I'm a piece of shit. I don't fit. So as I accepted my soul and experienced that I am enough, I'm a great, I'm a child of God. I don't feel that way anymore. I actually crack up when he's actually quite funny when he drinks. So I laugh right along with him. And he's like, he can have one, he can, stop. I just don't understand that. And he has none. And, he's just like my sister, my brother-in-law, like they all just stop. Again, I don't get that, but with Phil, I just think I don't feel that way anymore. The more I learn to love Becky for who she is and let Becky be who she is and not who I think you want me to be. And coming to terms with the fact that if you don't like me, being okay with that, because I'm a people pleaser. If you don't like me, I'm getting there. I'm not there, but being okay with it.
So you keep saying that and you're going to believe it. You know what I mean? Yes, it's like fake it till you make it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So to go back to answering your question, that there was a shift with that. When I hated myself, um, and isolated myself, I would yell at them. I would start fights because, just like what I said, what I do, if I felt less than at these social interactions before I connected with you, who felt the effect of screaming and raised voices? My kids. Same thing with Phil, because I was in so much pain, thinking that I had to do all these things to fit in, thinking that I was, less than all the time. They were the recipients of, they were the recipients of me listening to the narrative. And now, as the narrative shifts, they're the recipients of love and of patience. And again, like as I said to you in the beginning, I'm learning alongside my kids. So they're toddlers. So when they have tantrums, instead of being like, oh my gosh, we do this, like inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And now they know to do it but they don't know. I'm doing it for myself as well, because, so now that they're, instead of yelling, they're the two are the recipients of, because I do that because I don't want to destroy this piece that I have. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's almost like the addiction can be transferred to, like, you get a high off of yelling. You get a high off of self-righteous anger. You get a high off of gossiping about the other neighbors. Because when I gossip about the other neighbors with one of them, I feel connected to her. Oh my God, we're connected because we're both gossiping about, Sally down the street. And I would engage in that when I felt less than. Now that, again, that I'm loving Becky, I don't even want to engage in it because it gets to the point where it doesn't work anymore. Just like alcohol, it doesn't work anymore. There was a time when I would come in the house and I'd be like, oh, I just talked to so-and-so about Sally. And look, she likes me now because we just gossiped about her. She likes me now. But now I just don't engage. And it has become easier because I know it's going to result. I have a disease. And when I feel yucky like that and filled with toxicity I don't get the high anymore. The high's gone. What happens is I just feel like crap. And so I feel like that's like steps 6 and 7, huge character defect to gossip, to feel a part of. And I never thought that would go away, but it's like, what's important to me is God, my husband, and my kids. And if I engage in that, I'm hurting them too. And I'm human. So sometimes I, participate, but it's just like, I'm human. I could fall back into the narrative, but I know the solution now. So I grab it more quickly. So just if I fall into all those defects, again, because I'm human, I call you and I tell you, I did that and I feel so yucky. And I talk about it. So planting that seed with you and sharing that out loud when I get into that situation again, I can tell, like, it's not worth it, Becky. It's just like the drink. It's not worth it. The drink, it's not, play the tape through.
And you've talked a lot about getting to that place where you're your authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not preppy, right? You're not preppy.
No, but I went to a preppy high school.
Yes. And
you're around a
lot of preppy people. And for so long you did that. You put that outfit on but now you can wear your funky clothes, whatever that may be, your patchouli. We know that you love patchouli and you love the dead.
Yes.
And you can do that and still be your authentic self and love yourself.
Yes.
And isn't it interesting that why do we, and I think there's a lot of people that do that's out in the universe that know that, you know what, I don't want to drink. I have a problem with it, but I keep picking up every time because I get in a situation where I don't feel good, just like you described.
Mm-hmm.
I get there with my kids and the only thing I can do to make myself feel okay is by drinking. But I know in my heart that it's not working anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard when you're in that place.
It is. And also getting to the place where you trust God, that he put you there for a reason. Nothing happens in God's world by mistake, nothing. And if you really internalize that, he's putting you in that situation possibly to depend more on him, rather than yourself and your self-will.
And what do you think about the people that are listening that are like, God, oh my gosh, they're talking all this God, and oh, it's cult, it's a God, it's God, it's God. What do you say to that? What's your advice for
Um,
that person who's like, I don't want God. I don't like God. I've had terrible things happen in my life. How can there even be a God?
yeah. Oh, so I have felt that way before. And in sobriety, I have felt that way. And again, the reason was I would go to these AA meetings. I was not picking up a drink, but I would leave there and self-destruct and self-destruct with bulimia, convincing myself that I was going to die that way. This is not something I can put down. This is how I manage those feelings, those overwhelming feelings that, I'm a piece of shit. But I go to the AA meeting and tell you that, depend on God. Or so what I would say to those people is I understand. I understand how you feel. I did not wake up one day and just be like, God is real. God has helped me. God continues to help me. I did not wake up one day like that. It's a coming to that's happened over time, especially in the past year and a half. So what I would say is I understand. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's what I would say. And I would suggest connecting with someone who's living in a way that is a way that you wish you could live. Like there was a time when like couldn't even go to my mailbox. I was just so paralyzed by fear. So then I know you, and I'm like, well, I'm sure, I see you move with freedom. I listened to your podcast. Your podcast saved me after I had my third baby. I would just put all the kids in the car. I had a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a newborn. I was completely overwhelmed. That's how my kids would sing your song, Busy Living Sober, because that was on in the car. I would just go get a coffee and just drive. And they're like, Mommy, where are we going? And I'm like, I just have to listen to this podcast because I'm seriously going to freaking lose it. I'm going to lose it. So for those people, I understand, and just ask somebody for help. You can call me. You can email. Call me. I will give you my number, because God has us all here, and whoever is feeling this way, you have such a purpose. You really, really do. You might not feel it right now, and again, I understand that as well, but you do, and you deserve to come to. You deserve to come to that realization. And that can only happen with God's help.
I love that. Now, what
Mhm.
is, we're almost at an hour. Can you believe that? It's
No way.
crazy.
Are you
Yeah, we are.
serious?
Yeah, I am. I'm
Wow.
like crazy. So so you have 3 little ones.
I do. Yes.
And there's lots of anxiety right now because,
Mhm.
you have to make Santa. I mean, there's Santa, and then
Mhm.
there's like the elf on the shelf,
Oh
and
my
then
God.
there's the Christmas, and then there's the decorations, even if you're
Mhm.
Jewish, right now you're in the middle of
Yes.
Hanukkah, but
Yep.
you have all that is a lot of pressure as a mom,
It
isn't it?
is. It
And to make
absolutely is. Yeah.
sure that they have everything you want to get them. And then not to mention the inflation that's going on and how expensive
Mhm.
everything is. How
Mhm.
are you dealing with it? And how do you deal with it?
I get overwhelmed by it. I have moments of complete overwhelm because the parents, you're the magic makers, no matter what holiday you're celebrating. My daughter comes home from school and she'll tell me, so and so is doing this tradition. Can we do that tradition? I'm like, add it to the list, that's what my head tells me. But how I deal with it in that moment, I mean, I felt that way several times today. My daughter wants to bake all these cookies. It's just like, I'm like, where are we going to find the time for that? That's my disease response. My disease response is like, oh my God, did she know? Like, I have to wrap all these presents, blah, blah, blah. And
And you
then
have a
again,
full-time job too. On top of it, I've got to
yes,
remember. Yeah.
yes, yeah. I'm like superwoman. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. I just, um,
But you are. We all the moms out there are. We
every
are. We
single mom
are.
is.
Every
Mhm.
single mom is like a superwoman. Like we have the cape, and they try to say men and I'm not getting political here, but I'm just like women. We give birth to babies, okay? So we are way
Yes,
far superior. It's
yes,
just reality. So I don't,
it's so true.
but we're
Yeah,
superwomen, and and sometimes it gets overwhelming.
yeah. So how I deal with it is the same exact way I described to you earlier with the social situations. Is I take a breath, I pray, and I just say, God is within her. God is within her. God, I know you. I know you're able to help me through this. And the biggest thing for me is like I get overwhelmed thinking I never have enough time. oh my God, how am I going to have the time to do this? Oh my gosh, how am I going to have the time to do that? And the time, you always have the time. It's just, again, that's another narrative that my head tells me. So I just have to remove myself, like a mom, like I take a little time out. I just go upstairs. I remove myself from wherever my kids are, put them in front of the TV, which, and just go get quiet for at least like 3 minutes. And I return, getting back to that trust. And also acknowledging that not all that stuff is possible. Like the elf on the shelf, I threw it on the shelf today. He didn't arrive from the North Pole. He didn't bring any gifts. Like, and that's okay. There wasn't confetti coming out of their pancakes when they woke up this morning saying that the elf arrived. We even forgot his name. We have to rename him. You know what I mean? But being okay with that. Even if, Jennifer down the street, has like the elf like flying from the North Pole through her chimney. And my kids think that every elf does that because, Jennifer and her kids have that. It's being okay with the fact that that's not my thing. And there's other things that I'm capable with my kids. So that's how I deal with it. It's again, self-love, not pressuring myself to do all that and being okay with not.
Right. And I want, because this is a big thing. If this is a huge thing, I'm going to bring up right now, huge thing, social media. Because that's how you probably know that Jennifer down the street, because she's filmed it on Instagram and it makes it look so perfect. And not only is it on Instagram, but it's on Facebook too. And you're like, there goes that goddamn elf coming through everything. And oh my God, I'm such a loser because my elf, we don't even know its name.
Yeah, I just, my husband just threw it on the shelf. He literally did that last night. I felt, don't we have to do something with that? He's like, no, guys, yeah. And I think you're not supposed to like touch it. My kids like throw it in the fire. But you're right. Social media, you have these, to each their own, but you see this thing where everything, it's just a snapshot. It's just a snap, but it's also coming to recognize that takes time. Like there was a time when I would beat myself up because Jennifer down the street is doing that. It's all under the same umbrella of, waking up, coming to that God is within and learning to love yourself. Because when you love yourself, you're okay with the fact that Jennifer down the street is doing that and you're happy for her. That is so great that she's able to do that. But you know what? And recognizing there's so many great things I'm able to do for my kids as well. There is. I'm a terrible, terrible baker. My daughter loves to bake. She takes me out of my comfort zone quite frequently. She wants to bake 75 things every single day. And I used to be like, would you, blah, blah, blah. You know what I do? I get like the what is that? The cookie dough stuff, roll it out and she can decorate it herself. I don't do anything fancy. It's just all they want is to be with you. That's all they want is time with you. But again, that doesn't happen overnight. Recognizing that, for me at least, it has not. Social media has been quite dangerous territory because, like you just described, them posting this. What do? I go back to the narrative. Oh my God, I'm a piece of crap. Oh my God, I'm less than. And then recognizing with work, it doesn't just happen. That I'm capable of all these things with God. Look at all these times that all the wonderful things, all the wonderful moments I've had with my kids.
Well, one of the best gifts is that they have a sober mom.
Yeah.
That will always be there. And that is like, I think if it's the only thing I did right in my life, my kids got to have a mom that sometimes she'd be screaming, sometimes she'd be yelling, sometimes she'd be acting crazy like I do. But I was always sober and I was always there for them. And they didn't have to find me in a place which would be really detrimental, I think. I mean, it's nothing to be shamed about, but they didn't have to go there, And I think that if you haven't drank today, I mean, isn't that huge?
Huge. And I would also say too, going back to what you said about, they had a mom who was crazy, a mom who yelled. I imagine, we're all human, so we all have faults, and it gets overwhelming being a mom, and and so we do yell. But when that happens with me, something that I practice, I think, because it makes me feel yucky. But again, I'm human, so I yell and I get frustrated and I get overwhelmed and I get all those feelings that we all get. I apologize to my kids. I just say, mommy has really big feelings right now. really big feelings. And I'm sorry, that was not okay that I yelled. And I know that probably scared you. Um, and I'm sorry. That was, mommy's fault. I don't even know how I articulate it, but it's always an apology and validating that, it's not okay.
I
So,
think
and
that's
in turn, hopefully teaching them, because a lot of times you'll scream and walk away and it's like, and I can't, that's important to me close out those when that happens with my kids, because I want them to know that it's, we're human, and we all have big feelings sometimes.
we all do. We all do.
We all do. Yeah.
This was so awesome. You have to come back again. I know everybody's
I
going
would
to
love
love you
to.
because this has been amazing, amazing, amazing. And
Thank you so much
so
for having me.
thank you
And you're
so
like the
much for
best
coming.
interviewer.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
It's, I always want to be, they always ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like Barbara Walters. So I do it on my little podcast, as you know. And so anybody who's out there and listening, please reach out. You can reach out to me at bizzy@bizzyLivingSober.com or Elizabeth@elizabethchance.com. And I will forward your message to Becky. And
Yes,
I will,
please.
so you can really, if you want to talk to her, she will respond to you. I promise. And she'll give you her phone number in an email, not on the public format. I was like, no, we're not giving phone numbers out right now.
Yeah.
But what is your last word of advice to a mom or someone out there that's listening and is like, I don't want to go through Christmas and wake up Christmas morning hungover. I just don't want to do it. How do I do this?
My advice would be, we're not at Christmas yet. We're not there. My advice would be, what's today? Tuesday? I know it's hard. I understand. But one day at a time. It sounds so corny. And again, that's another like motto or saying that I had to internalize. It was just taking time, but that's what I would say, because I do the same thing. I will say, how am I going to get through raising my kids in middle school? I'm so scared. Is everything fine today? Am I sober today? Did I pick up a drink today? Okay, I didn't. So let's go to sleep, say our prayers, and wake up and begin again. And Christmas will come when it comes. That's another thing with my addiction. I live in yesterday or today or tomorrow. So it's a constant practice to return to right now, because that's all we have.
Yeah, right now. And I tell you, when you're doing the splits and you got one day and yesterday and the other day and tomorrow, and then you got to pull in between, forget it. It's not good.
Yes, exactly. And another thing is, like, when I'm living in like Christmas and how am I going to make it through, I find that I react more in the moment in a negative way, because I'm living in the fear and I'm making a story of, oh, I'm going to pick up a drink at Christmas. I'm so scared. How am I going to make it? So I react in that moment because I'm living in the narrative, which is not true. But in this moment, I have truth, which is I'm not picking up a drink.
Not only that, but you're helping a lot of people tonight, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on.
Yes.
Yay. So reach out, everybody. And I'll be back next week. I don't think I'm gonna have a guest. We'll see. Maybe I will. Who knows? But Becky, thank you so much for coming on. I love you so much. Mwah.
I love you too. I love you.
I love you. For me. And until next time, keep getting busy, living sober. Bye, everybody. Talk to you soon. Love you all. Thanks for following. Bye.